While I was overseas, serving in uniform like I'd done most of my adult life, my wife somehow convinced my elderly mother to rewrite the family trust. My name is Grayson Maddox, 37 years old, and I've spent the last 15 years serving as a field surgeon with the U.S. Army Medical Corps. I just got back from a 9-month deployment at a forward trauma station outside Al-Qaeda, patching up wounded soldiers under a tent with dust in my eyes and home on my mind. 3 days after I got back to Mason Ridge, I was going through a drawer in Mom's study when I found the documents. The family trust, the one my dad put together before he passed, wasn't just altered. It had been gutted and rebuilt from the ground up. And now, Tessa, my wife of 8 years, was named the primary trustee. My mom, Dorothy, was bumped down to secondary beneficiary. The paperwork was dated 4 months into my deployment. I sat there in the same chair I used to do homework in, flipping through every page twice, trying to make sense of it. That house, the land, it wasn't just property. It was legacy. 3 generations of Maddoxes had lived on those 15 acres of rolling Georgia countryside. My dad made it clear that land was meant to stay in the family. No exceptions. Everything all right in here. Tessa stood in the doorway, casual as ever, leaning against the frame. Her blonde hair was tied back, and she had on those diamond earrings I'd sent for our anniversary a couple years ago. I slid the papers back in the folder, calm on the outside. Just going through some things. Your mom's finances were a mess, she said, her voice light, like she was doing me a favor. I had to get things in order while you were gone. Someone had to. I gave a slow nod. I didn't trust my voice in that moment. I've been paying all her bills, she went on. Handling the taxes. She agreed the trust needed updating. Out in the living room, Mom was watching one of those loud game shows. She's 82 now, and lately, she's been getting her days mixed up more than usual. I'd noticed it on our video calls from overseas, but hearing it in person, seeing it, was something else. Thanks for keeping things organized, I said finally, the words hard to push out. I know you need time to settle in, Tessa said, giving me that soft smile. Take all the time you need. That night, long after she went to bed, I sat out on the porch, listening to the breeze in the trees. I thought about my dad, a military man like me. He used to say, the loudest guy in the room is rarely the strongest. I held on to that. Next morning, I kissed Tessa goodbye before she headed off to work at Pinecrest Capital. I told her I'd be spending the day with Mom. She didn't notice when I slipped those trust papers into my jacket pocket. I met Tessa 10 years ago, back near Fort Campbell, at a little coffee shop. She was sharp, ambitious, good at making people feel like they mattered. We were married in under a year. She always got along with Mom. At least I thought she did. I was thankful for that, especially after my dad passed 5 years ago. Dad was the planner in the family. When the lung cancer hit, he made sure everything was buttoned up tight. I remember his last words to me like they were etched in stone. Take care of your mother. That land stays in the family. No exceptions. For years, Tessa complained about how we were renting a place while all that land just sat there. We could build our own house there, she'd say. I always told her no. That land was for my mother to grow old and peacefully. My deployments had picked up over the last few years, and every time I came home, little things had shifted. Tessa had taken over everything. Mom's checkbook, meds, appointments. She's getting forgetful, Tessa would tell me. She needs help, Grayson. And it made sense until it didn't. On my second day back, I took Mom out to lunch, just the two of us. We went to Hattie's, the old diner she and Dad used to love after church on Sundays. How you holding up, Mom? I asked once we ordered. She smiled, a little tremble in her hands. Oh, getting by. Tessa's been such a help. I kept my voice steady. I saw the trust was changed. She blinked. Was it? The papers about the house and land. You signed them a few months ago. Her brow furrowed. Tessa brings me all kinds of papers to sign. Bills, insurance, she explains them, but she drifted off. I get mixed up sometimes. My stomach nodded. What kind of papers, Mom? Oh, just the usual, insurance, banking stuff. She said it was to protect everything while you were away. Said you'd want her handling things. Then she looked at me, eyes worried. Did I do something wrong, Grayson? I reached across the table, took her hand gently. No, Mom. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't do anything wrong, I told her again as we drove home. She nodded off halfway through the ride, peaceful in the passenger seat. I kept one hand on the wheel and used the other to call an old army buddy a guy who left the service to practice law. I kept my voice low, explained the whole situation as clear as I could. He listened, didn't interrupt, and when I was done, he just said, "Don't confront her yet. We need to see how far this goes." 3 days later, I got my first glimpse at how far it had already gone. I wasn't even digging for anything specific. I was helping Mom sort through some old photo albums in her bedroom when she mentioned a nice bank statement Tessa had brought by. "What kind of statement, Mom?" "From the bank," she said. "Tessa said the investments are doing really well." That set off alarms. I opened her nightstand drawer and found a folder tucked behind some crossword books. Inside were statements from 3 different accounts I'd never seen before. 2 were joint accounts, opened recently, with Tessa listed right alongside my mother. She had full withdrawal access. The 3rd was a brokerage account, the very one that held nearly $400,000 my father had worked a lifetime to build. My fingers went ice cold flipping through those pages. The numbers didn't lie. 78 grand had been withdrawn in the last 6 months, gone in chunks, anywhere from 5 to 15,000 at a time. Every withdrawal slip had my mother's signature on it, shaky and inconsistent, like she'd signed under confusion or pressure. I sat down on the edge of the bed, the papers fanned out around me. It looked like a crime scene. That's what this was. Not a misunderstanding. Not poor judgment. This was planned. Calculated. Step by step. Then Mom peeked in the doorway, watching me with worried eyes. "Are the numbers good?" she asked softly. "Tessa says not to worry about the details." I smiled at her, folded the statements gently back into the folder. "Everything's fine, Mom. I'm just catching up." That night, Tessa suggested we go out to celebrate my return. We ended up at one of those downtown places with cloth napkins and waiters who hover too much. She ordered champagne, wore a new dress I'd never seen before, and jewelry that looked expensive. "You seem distracted," she said, touching my hand across the table. "Still adjusting," I said. "Getting my bearings." "I've been thinking," she said, all lit up inside. "Now that you're home, maybe it's time we finally build on your mom's land." I even talked to an architect, just casually. I took a slow sip of water. "And what would happen to Mom?" "We'd take care of her, of course," she said, waving her hand like it was obvious. "But that house is too big for her now. There's a beautiful assisted living place near my office. Very exclusive." That's when it hit me, clear as daylight. This wasn't a few favors or a well-intentioned update to the trust. This was a long play. She'd been setting this up for years, waiting for the perfect moment, me overseas, Mom slipping, to pull the trigger. I didn't argue. Didn't raise my voice. I nodded where I needed to, smiled when it made sense. Let her paint her picture of the future while I mapped out my next move. "I think I need a few weeks to decompress," I told her. "Get back into civilian rhythm before we start making big decisions." She looked a little disappointed but said, "Of course, take your time." I excused myself to the restroom and stepped into the hallway. Pulled out my phone and called my attorney buddy. "I need everything you've got," I whispered. "Elder financial abuse. Trust and validation. I need it yesterday." Walking back to the table, I felt this strange calm come over me. Like the moment before a mission when everything clicks into place. The weight of betrayal was heavy, but clarity? That sharpened everything. A week later, I drove to Newfield to meet Frank Daltrey, an estate attorney who specialized in elder law. I told Tessa I was seeing old Army friends. She didn't question it. Frank reviewed the documents in his quiet, book-lined office that smelled like old leather and polish. "She was likely coerced," he said, eyes scanning the trust. "But proving it won't be easy." "Did she have a cognitive assessment done when she signed these?" "Not that I know of," I said. "But she's been slipping. Forgetting names, dates. Repeating herself." He nodded. "We'll need a specialist to evaluate her now. If we can show signs of decline today, we can argue it was already there when she signed." I left his office with a clear plan. Next day, I took Mom to see Dr. Marion Blake. She gave the kind of answers I expected, early-stage dementia, probably developing for over a year now. "Has anyone else noticed these symptoms?" she asked gently. "My wife," I said. "She's been handling everything while I was deployed." Dr. Blake frowned just a little. "And she never pushed for a medical evaluation?" "Apparently not." With that confirmation in hand, I decided it was time to bring things to the surface, not with a fight, but with questions. That evening, after Mom had gone to bed, Tessa and I sat down in the kitchen. "I took Mom to see a specialist today," I started. "She's showing early signs of dementia." Tessa's expression shifted, just slightly. "That's awful," she said. "But not surprising. I've noticed her memory slipping for a while now," Tessa said, her voice soft, almost rehearsed. Before or after she signed the trust amendment? I asked, keeping my voice calm steady. Her eyes narrowed. What exactly are you implying, Grayson? Just trying to get a clear timeline, I said. For the doctors. I've done nothing but take care of your mother while you were gone, she snapped, her voice getting sharper. Who do you think's been here every day? Because it sure wasn't you. I nodded slowly. You're right. And I do appreciate everything you've done. But I'm worried about some of the financial decisions that were made. What decisions? Her tone cut through the room like a blade. The trust changes. The new joint accounts. The withdrawals. That money was for your mother's care, she fired back. And the household. Every bit of it is documented. I'd like to see those documents, I said, still level. Tessa stood up so fast her chair scraped loud against the floor. I don't appreciate being interrogated, Grayson. Not after everything I've sacrificed. She agreed to all of it? I asked, quieter now. A woman with dementia? She wasn't diagnosed then, she snapped. Tessa grabbed her keys off the counter, her jaw tight. I need some air. We'll talk when you're thinking more clearly. The door slammed behind her. I sat there alone in the kitchen, letting the silence wrap around me. The old house creaked and settled like it was exhaling. I didn't move. The next morning, my bank called. Someone had tried to get into my personal savings account, one Tessa didn't have access to. The login attempts failed, blocked by the wrong password. That same afternoon, I found a letter addressed to my mom, certified mail from Silvergate Haven. It confirmed her upcoming move-in. The date? Set for next month. The signature? My mother's. Dated 3 days after I returned home. I showed her the letter later that evening. She looked confused. I don't remember this place, she said. Did I agree to move? Tessa says you did, I answered, watching her face closely. She shook her head slowly. I don't want to leave, Grayson. I promised your father I'd stay in this house. That night, I changed every password I had and froze my credit. Then I picked up the phone and called Frank again. It's worse than we thought, I told him. And she knows I'm digging. 2 days after that, I drove to the county clerk's office. I needed to see the real amendment, not a copy from our house, but the official document on file. The clerk, a kind older woman named Gladys, found the file. Maddox Family Trust, she said, handing me the folder. The moment I opened it, my blood ran cold. The notary stamp. It was signed off by someone named Amber Corbin. You know this notary? I asked. Gladys adjusted her glasses, took a closer look. Amber? Sure. She's with Holloway and Finch Law Group. Holloway and Finch Law Group. The same firm where Tessa's old college roommate, Aaron Holloway, was a partner. Funny. Tessa had never brought that connection up. I thanked Gladys and drove straight there. At the front desk, the receptionist told me Aaron was in court but said I could speak with Amber. Amber Corbin walked out a few minutes later, looking nervous the second she saw me. You're Tessa's husband, she said, avoiding my eyes. Can I help you? You notarized a trust amendment for my mother 6 months ago. She nodded. Yes. Everything was in order. Was my mother alone when she signed it? Amber hesitated. I don't recall specifically. I stepped closer, my voice low. Let me help you recall. Was my wife there when the papers were signed? I really can't discuss. My mother has dementia, I cut in. Diagnosed. Official. That amendment stripped her of control of the assets she'd managed for decades, and it happened while I was deployed. I need to know if you saw her sign those papers, or if Tessa just brought them to you for a stamp. Amber's face went pale. Mr. Maddox. I think you should speak to Aaron. I intend to, but you're the one who signed off. She stood abruptly. This conversation is over. That night, I got a call from an unknown number. I picked up. Grayson, the voice said. We need to talk. It was Aaron Holloway. We met at a quiet cafe downtown later that evening. She looked polished, professional, but there was tension in her eyes. Amber told me about your visit, she said carefully. Let me be clear, my firm takes notary standards very seriously. Did your firm draft the trust amendment? I asked. She let out a slow breath. No. Tessa brought it in already prepared. Said it was from your family attorney. Said you were fully aware. And my mother? Was she present when it was notarized? Aaron looked down into her coffee. No. Tessa said your mother was ill. Too ill to come in. Amber notarized it based on Tessa's word that your mother signed it willingly, Aaron said, her voice tight. That's illegal, I replied flatly. She nodded. It is. Then she looked me in the eye. I've already contacted the state bar to report it. Amber's been suspended while they investigate. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Erin took a slow breath. Because I've known Tessa since college. I never thought she'd. She didn't finish. There's more, Grayson, she added, hesitating. Last year, she came to me with questions about moving assets offshore, liquidating real estate. I assumed it was for a client at her firm. Now, I'm not so sure. My stomach turned. Offshore accounts. Property sales. That contract for the assisted living home. I leaned back and let the thought settle. How long has she been planning this? I muttered. Erin paused again. One more thing. 3 years ago, Tessa asked me about divorce law. Specifically, how military pensions and benefits are divided. Whether being deployed would impact spousal support. That one hit like a gut punch. 3 years ago, right around the time my deployments ramped up. Thank you for your honesty, I said, keeping my voice steady. As I walked out of that cafe, I called Frank. We need to move fast, I told him. She's been building this for years. I didn't confront Tessa with any of it. Not yet. Instead, I smiled through dinner while she rambled about house upgrades and modernizing the layout. I nodded while she suggested selling off parts of the land to cover Mom's care. I even let her talk about bringing in a financial advisor, someone she'd been meaning to loop me in with. All the while, I was quietly putting the rest of the pieces in place. Dr. Blake gave us a detailed report, full medical documentation showing Mom's symptoms had been progressing for at least a year and a half. Frank filed emergency motions to freeze every account tied to the trust. Every joint account Tessa opened? Locked. Then I hired a private investigator. He tracked the spending trail, high-end boutiques, lunch meetings with real estate developers, sit-downs with a luxury home builder. She'd even leased a separate apartment in Newfield under her maiden name, Donovan, 6 months ago. 10 days into the investigation, Frank called with an update. The judge granted temporary guardianship of your mother, he said, and we've got a hearing next week to contest the trust amendment. That same day, I quietly moved my things out of our bedroom and into the guest room. Tessa asked why. I'm tossing too much in my sleep, I said. Deployment's still in my head. Don't want to keep you up. The truth was simpler. I couldn't lie next to her anymore. 3 days before the hearing, I got a package from the investigator. Inside was a flash drive. Financial records. Deleted files from Tessa's laptop, but he recovered them. Transfers from my mother's accounts to pay off Tessa's credit cards. Over 40 grand. All in 6 months. That night, she walked into the kitchen while I was finishing a cup of coffee. We need to talk about your mom, she said gently. Cornerstone needs an answer by Friday. I looked up. I'm not sure that's the right move for her. Tessa sighed, loud and exaggerated. Grayson, be realistic. She can't be on her own anymore. We're not equipped to handle dementia care. We've managed so far. That's because I've been doing all the managing, she snapped. But this isn't sustainable. The facility is excellent. And the trust will cover everything. The trust, I repeated. The one you had her sign while I was deployed. Something flickered in her eyes, maybe worry, but it vanished quick. I did what needed to be done. Someone had to make those decisions. I appreciate that, I said, keeping my tone even. But I want to look into some other options before we make anything final. She forced a smile. The deposit's non-refundable after Friday. You already made a deposit? Of course. Good places have waiting lists. I put down $15,000 to hold her spot. She touched my arm. From her account, not ours. Don't worry. I nodded, tucking that detail away. Let me think about it overnight. Next morning, I drove out to the assisted living center myself. The director was polite but surprised by my questions. There's no waiting list right now, she told me. We have several units available. I asked about the deposit. She checked the records. It shows $5,000 paid, she said. By a Tessa Donovan. 5 grand. Not 15. Where'd the other 10 go? Another piece added to the puzzle. That afternoon, I met with Frank one last time before the hearing. Everything was ready, the files, the witness reports, the medical documentation. Every dollar accounted for. Every lie traced back to its source. The forensic accountant had finished her report, every transaction traced, every discrepancy laid bare. The hearing was set for the next morning. I hadn't told Tessa a word. She'd find out soon enough when the sheriff's deputy showed up at our door. That night, I sat out back again. Same spot, same old oak trees swaying gently under the Georgia stars. The breeze was cool, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a quiet kind of peace settle in my chest. Not joy, not relief, just stillness. At 7 a.m. sharp, the knock came. Tessa answered in her bathrobe, bleary-eyed. I watched from the kitchen doorway as the deputy handed her the envelope. She opened it, scanned the contents, and I saw the color drain from her face. "A court hearing?" she asked, turning toward me, voice sharp with disbelief. "Today?" "To challenge the trust amendment," I said evenly, "and to address the financial irregularities." "Financial?" Her voice caught. "This is ridiculous. I haven't done anything wrong." "The hearing's at 10, I said, not flinching. "Judge Cross, you might want to call your attorney." She stood frozen, hands trembling. "You've been planning this the whole time, pretending everything was normal." I looked at her for a beat. Learn from the best. We drove separately to the courthouse. She showed up with a team of lawyers, pulled last minute from her firm. I walked in with Frank and my mother, who clutched her purse with both hands but held her head high. Judge Ramona Cross didn't waste time. "This is a hearing to determine the validity of amendments made to the Maddox Family Trust," she began. Then, for 2 solid hours, Frank laid everything out. Dr. Blake testified about Mom's mental state. The forensic accountant walked through each questionable transaction. Aaron Holloway confirmed the notarization was improper. The private investigator laid out Tessa's secret lease, her meetings with developers, and the truth about the assisted living deposit. Tessa sat rigid the whole time, whispering frantically to her attorneys. When it was her turn to speak, she tried to play the hero. "I sacrificed my career to care for Dorothy," she said, voice trembling just enough to sound rehearsed. "Every financial decision I made was for her benefit." Then Frank dropped the hammer. He played audio recordings, Tessa's voice, clear and confident, talking to developers about opening up the property once the old woman was out of the way. Laughing, planning, trying to profit off my family's land. Judge Cross's face didn't budge, but you could feel the shift in the room. Her ruling was sharp and final. "The court finds clear and convincing evidence that Dorothy Maddox was not mentally competent at the time of the trust amendment," she said. "Furthermore, this court finds substantial evidence of undue influence and financial exploitation. The trust was restored to its original form. Tessa was barred permanently from ever being a trustee or beneficiary. All joint accounts were dissolved. Every dollar redirected back to my mother's control. A full forensic audit was ordered. And this court," Judge Cross added, "is referring the matter to the district attorney for potential criminal charges." Tessa didn't look at me as she walked out. I didn't bother watching her go. Instead, I turned to Mom. She reached for my hand, squeezed it tighter than I expected. "Your father would be proud," she whispered. A week later, I moved her into the old guest house on the property, the one my dad had built back when he still worked with his hands. I hired a full-time nurse with the funds we'd recovered. She's well cared for now, and more importantly, she's home. I filed for divorce the next day. Tessa didn't contest. I heard she left Georgia not long after, ran off to Louisiana where her sister lives. The Newfield apartment was abandoned, lease unpaid, furniture gone. All she took with her was what she could carry in 2 suitcases. Most nights, I still sit out back, watching those same oak trees bend in the breeze, listening to the land settle. That land stayed in the family, just like my father wanted. The trust is safe. My younger cousin Luke, who just passed the bar, now helps me manage it. Feels fitting. I don't spend much time thinking about Tessa anymore. Some betrayals run too deep for anger to last. You just let them drift. Instead, I focus on the good. Morning coffee with Mom. Weekend drop-ins from old army buddies. That quiet sense of knowing the storm passed, and I didn't let it take everything. My dad used to say a man's strength isn't in how loud he yells, it's in how wise he moves when it matters most. Took me a while, but I finally understand what he meant.